People of Reddit, what was your yep she/he is the one moment? We met at the end of high school and dated throughout college. I learned it in science class. After our first date she was just intoxicating. It was a perfect date. The feeling of her being the one just grew with each day. I was about 23 when I decided to ask her to marry me. We had discussed rings and weddings, and even had discussed names for kids. I know we were young, but there was no doubt that we were getting married. I bought a ring and was carrying it around with me in my pocket waiting for the right time. I had already asked her father. On the day I had decided to ask, I had planned a little walk out to this gazebo back behind her house near a lake. I was so nervous. I was driving her home. We had just had dinner when we got into a car accident. I had a small pickup truck which flipped. I was able to get out as we were T-boned on her side of the car. I dragged her out. She wasn't breathing. I started CPR for what felt like forever. The EMTs got there and took her to the hospital. I lost sight of her when we got to the ER. I thought for sure they'd save her. But they didn't. I haven't dated anybody since. It's been 25 years. I miss her every day.
The day I met him I knew he was the one. His shoes were awful, and he wasn't fazed by me raising them a bit. We sat and talked for 5 hours. I couldn't stop staring at him. I adored him from the first day. I went to work the next day and told my coworkers I was gonna marry this guy. So, we're getting married in August. 2 years to the day and time that we met. I was having a mental breakdown and he consoled me. That's never happened before in my life. I always got in trouble if I showed much emotion with my parents, and I never really showed much emotion in front of friends. But with him, the trouble seemed less troublesome. It felt okay that mistakes were made, and knowing I had someone on my side made it easier to handle the emotions. Also, his matzo ball soup is baller. There were 2 moments. On our second date, he busted out his ukulele and played a couple of Beatles songs to impress the lady, me. But instead of anything classic or romantic, he chose Honey Pie and Rocky Raccoon. Not only totally weird song choices, but also 2 of my absolute favorites. Really, I knew right then, but a second date is a precarious time to decide to marry someone. The super real, 100% absolutely moment was my 30th birthday. First we were together. He took me up to our favorite hiking trail, and less than 10 minutes in, it started just pouring rain. I said I didn't mind pushing through some rain, but it would be okay if he'd rather go back. He said we should go the first mile to get to the waterfall. Partway up this trail, there's a wonderful waterfall spot with rocks that practically form a bench under/behind it. When we got to the waterfall, rain was still pouring, but now we're protected under the waterfall. He magically produces a bottle of my favorite champagne, 2 plastic dollar store flutes, and a fancy cupcake with a candle. We took a bunch of silly, absolutely drowned rat-soaked selfies together. Champagne under the waterfall in the rain. Most romantic thing ever, and most thoughtful birthday I'd ever had. We used those silly plastic champagne flutes again on our wedding day. I was mad at him. I watched him walking away. I didn't care. But then it hit me. Felt like I got punched in the gut. My heart sank. That's when I knew. Now, over 20 years later, and we're still together. He was, and still is, the one and only. A week or so into dating, we were sitting on my living room floor, discussing our food likes and dislikes. At some point one of us brought up green bell peppers, and we both said, "God, I hate green bell peppers," at the same time. For the both of us, we have pinpointed that stupid little moment as the exact second that both knew. We have been married 25 years this past February. We cooked in the kitchen. It just happened. There are no words I know to describe the clarity and joy and peace and comfort that I felt, maybe just home. It was a moment I won't forget.
At a busy train station, a pretty girl bumped into me. She said sorry, and I said it's okay. After a few minutes, when I tried to pull my wallet from my back pocket, I realized it was no longer there. That was the moment I realized she was the one. I looked for her and told the authorities, but she was long gone. We came out of a show, and she was hungry. Here they sell street sausages wrapped in bacon like they're hot dogs, and throw onions, peppers, etc. on top, which is all fried up in front of you. I watched that woman destroy that hot dog like it was the last hot dog before an apocalypse, while we stood on a very crowded sidewalk. There was onions and peppers all over the sidewalk, and her coat, she had many different condiments/liquids on her face, and she just smiled while demolishing that thing. Like, I really cannot express that enough. I had take my breath away blaring in my head while watching this unfold, and that's when I knew. My, now, wife always wanted to have kids in her early 30s. I come from an abusive childhood, and being responsible for a human being was something that always scared me, because by the time we met I already had adapted some bad habits from my father. At the age of 28, when we were together for 2 years, I asked her to take some time and think about if she wants to keep our relationship going even if I'm not willing to become a father. After 2 weeks and lots of talking, she told me that she wants to be with me, no matter if we will be parents or not. At that moment I decided to marry her. Now we are both 34, married, and have a beautiful daughter of 5 years. I got rid of alcohol and cocaine addiction and turned my health completely around. I'm in the best shape ever, physically and mentally. She always stood by my side and helped me through the war against my demons. She and our daughter are the best things in my life. She admitted the reason we were having so many problems with our scanner at work, despite the fact we rarely even used it, is because she was working up the courage to ask me out and thought that bending over in front of my desk on a regular basis would encourage me to do it instead. Which it would have done, had I not been deliberately averting my eyes every time she did so she couldn't catch me staring and think I was a pervert.
We were maybe 2 to 3 months into dating. He made a joke during dinner that unknowingly triggered some trauma I hadn't disclosed to him yet. It was an absolutely non-offensive joke, but it triggered a very specific memory for me that caused me to have a panic attack. I completely shut down and told him I had to leave. I couldn't explain to him what was going on in my mind, but I needed to get away from the situation. He walked me to my car, and then I know he followed me home in his own car from a distance to make sure I got home safely because I was almost unresponsive to him. He opened up the conversation gently the next time we saw each other and asked me if I had seen a therapist lately. He told me he didn't know my specific circumstance, but he knew what it was like to be overwhelmed by thoughts. Over the next year, I went to therapy and worked through my issues, and he supported me all the way. He always made sure, and still does, that I know being with him is a safe space, even if I cannot express my feelings all the time. We were sleeping in the same bed. I was cuddled up with my head on his shirtless chest. Woke up in a huge pool of my own drool. Mortified, I grabbed a towel that was thankfully right by the bed and started to try to sneakily dab it up. He'll never know. I finally look up at his face to check that he hasn't stirred, and he is very awake, and watching me clean up my drool with an amused look on his face. Wasn't grossed out. Don't mock me. Slept with me the next night. Didn't judge me. Knew he was a keeper.
2 answers, really. Either the time we had our worst fight ever and my every instinct was to walk away forever, but I realized I just couldn't do it because it was the stupidest thing I'd ever done in my life, so God apparently I was going to stay, and we were going to talk this out if it took all night. It didn't. Quite. Or, if you want the sweeter version, the first time she was laughing so hard she couldn't breathe and instinctively curled into me. There's 1,000 moments, really. Making her smile is my win condition for life. Last Monday, June 19th, was our 1-year anniversary. We've been dating through a difficult final year at school, or 6th form, however now we were finally off on break to enjoy things. To celebrate 1 year, we wanted to do something kind of low-key, so we went on a walk to a place she knew which was a man-made lake. She discovered it in lockdown. I never knew it existed. So here we were, just sort of chilling around before both of us decided to sit on the branch of an overhanging tree, above a small lake. We sat there for some time, and I went to find my phone to text my dad something, however I noticed the zip on my pocket was broken and I looked down to see my phone half submerged in the water. I try to climb down to get it, but I'm heavy and not exactly the nimblest. After nearly suffering a nasty fall from the tree, I got up and started to panic about how to get my phone. At this point, she turns to me and says, "Don't worry," and immediately starts climbing the branch, takes her shoes off, and walks halfway across the river to grab my phone. Even though she has a big fear of water, she didn't hesitate for a moment as she grabbed it for me. At this point, she's the one has been the only thing going on in my mind since. I had recently quit my job and moved to another city where my work prospects didn't really line up properly. We've been living together a while and things were getting difficult financially. Mountain of debt, difficulty in paying rent, etc. One night she says, "I have this gold bangle that we can sell to get rent for the next 5 months." I knew at once that she is the one. We never sold the bangle, and I was extra motivated to go out and make something of myself. We're getting married in November.
On our second date, he came to my place and made me dinner, including homemade pretzel rolls. Our first kiss gave me goosebumps all over, and I had never experienced a kiss like that. He was a single dad, and I worked the night shift. He would drive to my place at 8 a.m. when he didn't have kids, and hold me until I fell asleep many mornings so we could get extra time together. He said, "I love you," while I was asleep, but I heard him. I knew on our sixth date, he was the one for me. I told him 2 months and just so you know we're going to get married. He said, "Let's go to the courthouse now." We got engaged around month 4, moved in together at month 6, and have been together 4 years now. Married 1 year, thanks to COVID pushing our wedding back. I finally left an abusive relationship. He was the only person I could get a hold of. He opened his home to me and my 3 children. Once the kids were settled, we went to another room. He wrapped his arms around me and asked me if I felt safe. After I got done sobbing into his chest, he said he was proud of me. We had been dating for 2 months and we were in Cancun. It was dark, and we were both a little tipsy. There was music playing somewhere. I can't remember the song now, but it was one we both liked, and he just starts dancing with me amidst these palms. He's looking at me like I hung the moon, and I internally panic and think, God damn it. We're getting married. It took him a little later to catch on to what was gonna happen, but not much later. That was late February, and we were married in November. Been 10 years, so it's going well.
Ever since I can remember, I have wanted a family. We were visiting her sister with a newborn who had to run out for some errands, and she asked us to watch the baby. The way she cared for him, her natural mother's instincts, the way she talked to him like they were having a conversation, made me crumble. Started saving money for a ring that very day. Been together 12 and married 10 years.
I was financially in a deficit when we met. I work in an industry that relies on your passion before you make any kind of decent money. It was January, and it's cold where we live. It was -28°C on our first date, a few days before, with wind chill. It wasn't much better the second date. I did not have a proper winter coat. I would layer, and usually, with a little Canadian gumption, it was enough to get through the winters. He showed up with an older coat of his, really warm, lined, suitable up to -40. And was like, "I hate to see you so cold." Now, there have been countless moments when I knew he was the one, but the care for my person so early on really hit a note in my soul. We moved in together after 6 months, have been together 10 years, and married for 6. We have 2 little girls. One night early on in a date, when we weren't even officially boyfriend and girlfriend, we stayed up until 5 a.m. texting. We talked about everything and anything, asking so many questions and being open about it all. I felt so giddy and couldn't stop smiling. I slept maybe 3 hours that night, but it was so worth it, because now that man has been my husband for over 2 years now. I was feeling sick, and he was fine with scrapping our plan, and we took a nap together for our second date. Just had our 4-year anniversary. He told an entire classroom at university that he cried every time he watched this documentary about the last polio victims still living in iron lungs. The combination of empathy, vulnerability, and security to share that made me know I wanted to pursue him. I think I said out loud, I am going to marry that man. I didn't know if it would really be him, since we barely knew each other at that point, but I knew that everything he embodied in that moment was what I wanted in a life partner. I got the courage to ask him out about a year later, and we've been married for nearly 2 years now. I feel more blessed every day to have such a wonderful husband.
The first time we went to the library together and got to the checkout and she had her library card number memorized, I knew she was the one. When this girl at the gym suddenly dyed her hair blue, I finally realized she resembles an old romantic crush back in high school. It was after I got rejected by another girl at the gym, but the blue hair suddenly made me go crazy and say, I want to marry her. While she and I were having a breakfast date, she ordered crepes for the first time and I'm a nervous eater. She and I were having a great conversation, but while she and I were talking I somehow managed to eat her entire plate of crepes without her noticing, and me not noticing I did it. On our first date, I asked her if, hypothetically, we were to get married one day and I had to move back to where I came from due to work or lifestyle reasons, would she come with me? She replied, yeah, sure, if our relationship reaches that level. In that moment, I knew she was the one. She helped me out at a low point in life for me, when very few seemed to care to help. It was a pretty small ask, but she was like, what? Of course, I'll help. And it meant the world to me. She's a very, very good person. Beautiful, smart, and so kind to people.
I was ill, and I asked my husband, then boyfriend, to make a childhood comfort classic for me. A bologna and ketchup sandwich. He came back with 2, ate one with me, and remarked, this is pretty good. I love my husband and his equal garbage food taste.
I always enjoyed taking a trip by myself while in a relationship. The last trip alone, I found myself thinking this would be more fun if she was here for the first time. I knew then that she was the one. I saw her in a dream before I ever saw her face. We got to know each other before meeting in person by writing letters when I was on a ship. This was before the internet's mass adoption. We've been married going on 23 years and have been through a lot. We are still very much in love with each other and are enjoying each other's evolution. My story is mine, and I would never encourage someone else to do something that's stupid and reckless, but hey, sometimes it works out. Her moment for her was when we first met and hugged and her heart told her home, and it's been her breath since. For my, now, wife, it was her smile. She looked at me on our first few dates and her smile was utterly hypnotic. Like, Medusa level hypnotic. I thought, this is the most beautiful thing I have ever set eyes on in my life, and like 4 days into going out together I said, I think I'm falling in love with you. She absolutely hates herself. That was 1993, 30 years ago. Her smile is still as beautiful now as it was then. Told me to get therapy or she would leave. I got therapy and it worked wonders. I'm still with her and love her to death. I plan on proposing to her when I turn 21. We were fostering a stray cat who had had kittens. The kittens all had homes lined up with people we knew. The poor mother cat just had health problems and health problems popped up. We were at the vet with her so many times. She wasn't in pain, but with the vet bills and the behavior stuff that comes with health issues like these, I knew she was unadoptable and would need significant care. I told her, my then girlfriend, that I had to keep the mother cat, even though we both had special needs animals already, and adding more would delay us moving in together. She was like, yeah, of course. I love her. Like she'd never even considered any other options. She was so kind and loving to that cat, who randomly attacked us and peed on the floor throughout her first year and a half with us. She was as all in as I was every single day. Our passions and values are the same, and my partner is still the most compassionate person I know. We still have the kitty too, who we adore. I was talking to a girl on TeamSpeak entering a League of Legends lobby. She muted herself in TeamSpeak, but unknowing to both of us, the new voice chat feature in the LOL lobby connected us both, so she was not muted there. She let out the biggest atomic burp. I couldn't stop laughing for at least 10 minutes. Same for her, but out of embarrassment. It was so random and unexpected it was hilarious. This was 5 years ago. Still together. Also still playing League of Legends together and both still being bad.
When he told me he was willing to wait for me when I told him I was deploying for 6 months and wasn't looking for a relationship. We met 4 months before that. He said he loved me, he would wait for me, and asked me to marry him. We got married 3 days before I deployed. He came to Japan to visit me halfway through the deployment and we had the best time ever. We've been married ever since. That was 19 years ago. 4 kids later, we're still going strong.
I wouldn't say I had just one moment, but it's more of a collection of moments. Being with my wife is just easy. We are real with each other, caring, and just overall always want to work to improve our relationship. Of course, there are hard times we have to overcome together, but we will always figure out a way through it together.
He was a frat brother of my sister. I joined the frat and was so impressed with his intelligence and wit. After a few months I invited him to dinner and told him I wanted a relationship. He was fresh off a 9-year marriage that was never about love. So, he tried to scare me off by stating he only had 10% of his time for a relationship. I don't know what made me say it, but I looked back at him and said that was okay. I would supply the other 90%. We got married 8 months later. August will be 41 years.
On the first date I took her out to a fancy ice cream place. She got a waffle with ice cream and other things. There was a slice of grapefruit for a garnish, and she said, "What is this healthy thing doing on my plate?" That's when I knew. Been married 12 years come November.
I never actually had this realization. I met my husband when we were 14. We grew up together, became a part of each other's families early. When we fell in love, it was gradual and just like waking up well rested every morning. He has always been there, and I hope he always will be. He picked me up for a date very early on wearing a button-down short-sleeved shirt with Bugs Bunny wearing a sombrero dancing. Like, multiple images repeated over and over again like he was dancing. I saw that and knew he was the silly one who would make me laugh forever. Life can be hard sometimes, find someone who will make you laugh. We're 24 years in now, and I'm so glad I chose him. We were camping with another, much more adventurous couple in the middle of nowhere in the mountains of Colorado. Way out of my comfort zone. We had been together about 1.5 years at this point. The other couple decided they want to go hiking off-trail to reach a peak we would see in the distance. No maps, just winging it. I was so anxious, and that anxiety showed. An easy walk across a log had my legs shaking and I felt sick. He didn't shame me. Didn't urge me forward to keep up with the others. Didn't rush me, just encouraged me. And when I made it across, he gave me a big high five and said, "I knew you could do this." That moment almost had me in tears, because never in my life has someone encouraged me to face my fears rather than shame me for having them in the first place. He proposed a year later, and we've been married since this past January. Best decision ever. I'd lost my phone the previous day, so we went to the mall to get me a new one. At the time my credit score was really bad, but I didn't know, so after a 1.5-hour wait and another hour picking out and setting up a phone in the Apple Store, my application was rejected. We left the mall and went to a T-Mobile store nearby. Same story. Finally decided to go back to the mall and got a phone at Verizon. In all, it took about 5 hours, and I was exhausted and miserable. The entire time he remained positive, held my hand and my purse when I really started to get frustrated and was just rock solid. That was March 23, 2019. We've been married for 3 years and have a 3.5-month-old son. He is still as patient and loving as he was then, and we're so lucky to have him. We had flirted for a year online, we are from different countries, and then I broke it off. A few months later, my dad was rushed to the hospital with a blood clot in his brain. The only one I wanted to talk to be my then ex. We have been together since then, a year later. I was already 99% sure, but then he handed me a Pepsi in a can and flipped the little metal thing around like I always do. And that's what sealed the deal. Going to propose next month and I can't wait.
First date she gifted me socks. I proposed 6 months later. Been married the best 8 years of my life, and she still gets me socks. I can't remember, it feels like I always knew. We met at 14, started dating at 17, we felt like we were already married. At 28, we got married officially. We're both 40 now. She stood up and I saw her face. That was it. Still together after 36 years. When she dropped $15K for my attorney without a second thought. She scratched my back with her nails.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.